Welcome to the How Did I Get Here podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Poley, and this is a conversation I had with Amanda Shulman. Amanda is the owner of Her Place in Philadelphia. Amanda, thank you for doing this.
I'm stoked to be here.
I'm super excited to talk to you because you have a new restaurant. We worked together in Vegas for a little bit. We got to know each other. I think you're an amazing human being and
Thank
also
you.
an extremely, extremely talented cook. And I say cook because the way you approach things, your methodical outlook on, I'm working on this bread, it's not airy enough. I'm just like, what the fuck?
I want to be a cook forever. I don't ever need to be called chef.
Yeah, don't we all? So the whole idea of How Did I Get Here podcast was for me to get together with my friends and hear their story of why they got started, how they got started, why they kept doing it after failure.
Yep.
And I think you have an interesting story. So you didn't want to get into the restaurant industry from the beginning.
Well, at first, how far back are we going?
We have all the time in the world, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, initially I wanted to be a writer, a food writer. And the moment you tell somebody you love cooking, the first thing people said to me was, don't go to restaurants. And I was like, okay, well, I'll try not to go to restaurants.
Sound advice.
Yeah. So I actually did everything to avoid ever trying to be in a restaurant. I studied journalism. I did a lot of writing. I did the test kitchen route. I tried a lot of other things. And then I did my first stage in a restaurant. And I was like, oh my God, everything else is so slow.
Where was that at?
My first stage was at Amis. Vetri is a Roman trattoria.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
And once I tasted it, I was like, oh, well, everything else is way too slow.
What expectation did you go into Amis with?
Well, it was actually an accident. So I went there to interview Mark's dad for a profile I was writing for my journalism class. And it was pick an interesting person in Philadelphia and profile him. And I was like, everybody knows who Mark Vetri is. But like, I go to Amis and it says Sal's Meatballs. Like, who's Sal?
Who the hell's Sal?
Who the hell's Sal? So I got in touch with Sal and I went to interview him. He's like, let's meet at Amis. I cook staff meal there on Wednesdays. I was like, okay, whatever that means, great. So I show up and he's like, grab a chef's coat. Here's my knife. We'll just talk while we make meatloaf. I was like, okay. So we ended up cooking staff meal for the entire staff and talking and doing the interview that way. And I went up to the chef afterwards and I was like, can I come back next week? And I ended up working there the rest of my time in college.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did you expect? What did you realize that was different about Amis than some of the other places you've been?
In like everywhere. I mean, at that time when I was there, it was just like a powerhouse crew. Mm-hmm. And I was, the first couple of years of my life in kitchens, I was always the youngest. So everybody kind of pulls around and is really, really nice and thoughtful about bringing you up and kind of bringing you in and teaching you things as like, the greenest person in the kitchen. Yeah, it's like, here, square off these 40 quarts of potatoes because I don't want to do them, which is great. But also like, oh, come back here and roll pasta for 5 minutes. I was in a really good position that way. But I mean, the food there was so good. That was also...
I miss it.
That was such a fun restaurant in a way that not a lot of restaurants are anymore, just from atmosphere. Like that place was so alive. Yeah. So I felt really lucky that I had my first experience there. But
you came from a household of culinarians,
I mean, culinarians, like everyone, I'm Jewish, so everything's about food. Every holiday is about getting people together. Every Friday night is big, enormous meals before you do anything with your friends. And my mom's a great cook. My grandmother was, and my grandmother is a good cook, and everything is always about food.
What was the conversation with your parents when you said, hey,
I don't want to go to law school anymore?
I know we've been talking about this my whole life, but there's an opportunity at this place called Amis.
You know what? I give them a lot of credit. They were really supportive. Mm-hmm. And my mom has kind of a unique career path as well. She's actually an equestrian, and she's a professional horseback riding teacher and rider, as is my sister. Okay. So they kind of understand the whole do what you love thing. But as someone who was such an academic my entire life and who, wanted to work for the UN and do human rights law or be a journalist, like it was definitely a loop that took a little bit adjustment, but they got on board. I've thrown them a lot of curveballs,
sure,
so
yeah.
they can roll with it. Thankfully,
every cook chef's parents go through the same.
Yeah,
like,
100%.
Like what?
I was working. You ever go to Roman's in Brooklyn and Fort Greene?
No.
Amazing
Should I put it on
restaurant.
the list?
Yeah,
Okay.
classic neighborhood spot. I worked there for a little bit, and I was working the wood burning oven, and my parents came in for dinner, and I remember my dad walking by the kitchen door to go to the bathroom, and I'm like stoking this fire, and I was covered in burns. I was so sloppy, and his face was like, what the fuck?
Where did we go wrong with her?
How did this happen? Yeah. But they're amazing. They're so supportive. So
being an academic, is, I feel like that's one side of the brain.
Yeah.
What was your transition from being an academic to being working with your hands and having to produce the same thing over and over under a time limit, under pressure? Like, how did that translate?
That's a good question. I'm super competitive.
Yeah.
Academic, sports, all of it. So it just became a competition every day. Mm-hmm. And like you realize the competition's with yourself.
With yourself.
So that's why cooking's so great. It's like, how fast can I roll 700 tortellinis this week? And how fast can I do this? And I guess the academic side, it kind of translates because you're always trying to discover a faster way. How do I make this better? How do I make this more efficient? Mm-hmm. But it's all mental.
Yes.
I think so. And I will say, just to touch on the academic portion, I think that's why I like running a restaurant so much, because it's not just cooking.
It's a game.
It's a game, it's every part of your brain. Mm-hmm. I'm all of a sudden an accountant. I'm doing marketing and social media strategy. I'm human resources. I'm mentoring.
You're a babysitter.
I'm a janitor. I'm a lawyer. I'm negotiating leases.
Right.
I don't know.
The negotiating leases. Holy shit. We just went through that whole process.
I'm doing 2 today, and my brain's going to explode.
Yeah.
But I definitely think there's a lot of crossover in between too. It's not just working with your hands, but I love that because you can also work with your hands and think about 10 other things at the same time, which is nice.
So you're finished school.
Yes.
You're at a Mies. What happens next?
I finished school. I'm at a Mies.
What school did you go to?
I went to UPenn.
And you got a degree in?
Political science and journalism.
That you're using every day of your life.
Every day of my life for everything. I graduated and I wanted to keep working at a Mies, but they were actually full. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, I'll just stage until somebody quits. You know, everybody quits all the time in restaurants, so something will open. And I was staging, and they're like, why don't you go stage at Vetri? And I was like, so scared. That was the big league.
I'm not ready for that. Like,
I didn't know anything. I was like, what am I going to do there? So I went and I ended up getting offered a job, and I remember them offering me the job in the basement at 11:30 at night, and I said, "Are you sure?" And then I started there the next week.
You don't want to do this.
I couldn't. I was so scared the entire time. I remember, I don't know if Mark knows this, I was in the basement Googling third pans, and someone would be like, go get a half pan, go get a third. I didn't go to culinary school. Yeah. I'm like, okay, yeah, no problem. And I would go in the basement under the steps, and I was so grateful that there was Wi-Fi there, and I would Google third pan, sixth pan, because I just was like, I'm not going to tell these people that I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing. And I ended up working there for 2.5 years. Yeah. The first time around.
It's my first kind of breakthrough job in Chicago. Was this like super crazy trendy bistro in downtown Chicago, and I was like,
what was it called?
It was called Mango with Steve Gepetti. He had just won like Food and Wine magazine. This was like 98, you know? And everybody that worked there went to Kendall College. Everybody that worked there graduated from there. And then there's me that never went to school, just came from like some country club.
Yep.
And they were like, oh, grab me a sautoir or this. I'm like, hey, can you not use fancy French words in front of me? Because I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, just break it down for me.
And I was like, you mean a saute pan? There's tons of these here. Stop calling it that. So it's like, I can relate to you. Yeah. Like, I don't fucking know what that is.
Totally. And my whole idea was just like, fake it till I make it.
Fake it till you make it.
I still feel like I'm doing
Words
that.
to live by. Imposter syndrome is real, right?
Oh, it is. That is a whole other topic. That is so real. That hits me like
I get when people
hard.
Like come into the restaurant, they're like, I've been following your whole career. I've always wanted to work for you. I'm like, really? Like, why? You know?
Yeah, I'm like looking around like, who are you talking to?
Yeah. And then a month later, I'll go up to them. So, are you still stoked to be here? This is so awesome. I'm like, oh, okay.
And my imposter syndrome is real. Sometimes paralyzing. Really, very real. Wait, what were we talking about?
The experience at Vetri. Sorry, we're going to go on a lot of side missions.
But I didn't know if you're the guide here.
I'm the guide. We're going to go on tons of side missions. We might not complete those side missions, but I'll always bring us back to the original topic.
Great. Yeah. I just want to make sure I'm in my lane.
Yeah, the ADD is real. So,
great, yeah.
The experience at Vetri. So tell us about it.
That was school. Mm-hmm. It was amazing. I was completely obsessed.
What a great place to start, because I feel like that kitchen is like, we're gonna take care of you, and it's gonna be hard, but we're not gonna treat you like a piece of shit.
I feel so lucky for my time there, and I feel so grateful that I got that opportunity in that moment in time. And I will say, it is so different today. Mm-hmm. Everywhere, you don't have people's time like we were allowed to give back then. And I learned a lot because I was there all the time. Mm-hmm. I was there every single day from 10 a.m. until close, and then after close, because we sat and we dissected everything and talked about what we wanted to cook the next day. And I was completely obsessed, and that was like the only thing I really cared about and focused on for 2.5 years. And I think that was the building block for my entire trajectory going forward. It was amazing. Yeah. I learned everything.
Everything you need, the foundation of everything.
And if there was something, I mean, you know, you get to touch your hands on, you learn about the milling, you learn about bread, you learn about pasta, but I was breaking down whole goats every day. We got in we were getting in whole rib racks, and I was breaking down ribeyes. Like, what 21-year-old cook with zero experience gets to do that?
At a fine dining restaurant.
100%. Yeah. And I was obsessed. I just drank it up. It was like, you know, I loved Penn. I always loved school, but I'm taking geology classes to fill requirements. And I would remember calling my dad crying. I'm like, this is such a waste of time. Like, what am I doing here? Uh-huh. And there I'm like turning artichokes or deveining foie gras for 6 hours. And I'm like, I am so fulfilled.
Yeah.
Like,
this is it.
Wow. Like, this is it.
Uh-huh.
So it was amazing.
Right. So you finished with Mark. You were there. How long were you there for?
2.5 years.
2.5 years.
Yeah. I finished there, and I worked my way through all the stations. And I was like, okay, I'm ready for something else. And Mark's like, why don't you go spend time with my best friend at his restaurant in Italy? Mm. So he sent me to Bergamo.
Bergamo?
I lived in this apartment with 2 other cooks from Osteria della Brughiera, which is where I ended up working.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I was there for 4 months, and we worked 6 days a week. Yeah. And it was a 1 Michelin star Italian restaurant. In Italy, they take Michelin stars like very seriously.
Extremely.
Like, people are like, where'd you go to eat? How many stars does it have? And I was like, what? Like, what? Yeah. Obviously, we don't have stars in Philadelphia. Yeah. Like, who cares?
Who cares?
But it was intense, and it was way fancier than I was expecting.
Oh, no kidding.
Well, you know, like, you have this dream of Italy. Like, I'm going to go live in a house with a grandma.
With a grandmother and
roll tortellini and be fed mortadella all day.
Sit down at the table and, you know.
This was not that at all. They're like, the first day, I spoke a little Italian, and I spoke Italian, and they said, mettere questo dalla abattatore. Put this in the blast chiller. Mm-hmm. I'm like, what? Like, my vocabulary, literally, like, first of all, a blast chiller in English, but it was way fancier than I was expecting. But just to be in Italy and be in another kitchen and be surrounded by the ingredients, and, you know, on my one day off, I would go to Parma and learn about prosciutto and go. It was just being at the source, especially cooking that food, and I had cooked it for so long with Mark.
Did it hindsight's everything in life, but did it make you understand Vetri more?
Oh, 100%.
I've been seeing exactly.
I mean, everything from the wall color to like dishes Mark was obsessed with, and I was like, why does he like this thing so much? And then I'm like, okay, I understand. Or casoncelli, which I had made thousands of times. Right. Now I go and I eat casoncelli at every restaurant, and like, you know, you connect the dots and everything makes sense.
Isn't that funny when you go and you see, like, in America, it's just a lot of versions of things that are from Europe or from somewhere else. So Mark's restaurant is not a carbon copy, but it's his interpretation of like Europe and the design that he likes, and the chandelier and everything. And you go there and you see it, you're like, oh, it's starting to make sense.
It was so cool.
That happened to me with Chinese food. You go to these Chinese restaurants and you walk in and it's red and gold and gaudy and black plates, and you're just like, what the fuck is going on? And there's like things hanging, and you're just like, what is this place? And your whole life, these are the Chinese restaurants you go to. And when I was in China, And I went to a Michelin-starred dim sum restaurant. You walked in, and it's exactly that.
Really?
It's this huge, gaudy place with gold koi fish, and the things they do are so gimmicky. But it was a 3-star Michelin dim sum restaurant, and it was so delicious and mind-boggling. And I'm like, oh,
it all makes sense.
It's not like a cheap Chinese restaurant. They're just bringing their influence here, and we just don't understand any of this fucking shit.
Yeah.
So that was like, it's funny that you mentioned. I immediately thought of
it's cool.
being in
It's
Macau,
just the context.
I get it now.
Yeah.
Like, I get it now.
Totally. All about context.
Yeah. Where else did you go in Italy?
Like eating wise?
Just like into your how long were you there for?
I was there for 4 months.
4 months, yeah.
And
you stayed mainly, or did you travel a lot?
We worked 6 days a week. So I was in Bergamo the whole time.
Did you do lunch and dinner with a break in between, or?
We did lunch and dinner with an hour and a half break in between. I would go for a run every day.
Yeah.
And on Monday mornings or Sunday, whenever I got out, that one day off, I would wake up, I'd go to this train station at 5 o'clock in the morning and be like, where can I get to in 5 hours that I can go explore the day and come back before service tomorrow. So I went everywhere. Yeah. I went to Torino, I went to Venice, I went to Florence, I went to Sondrio on the border of Switzerland. I went to a lot of places just to eat. And
just to see and eat, yeah.
See and eat and explore.
So your experience of Italy up to this point has been with Mark Vetri, basically.
Yeah, besides I studied abroad.
Yeah. Oh, okay, so you did. So
I was in Rome for 3 months.
And was it a culinary experience?
No.
Did you explore any culinary, or were you just
it's
kind of
all kind of culinary.
It always is.
If you have the right mindset.
But you didn't have the right lenses.
No.
Okay.
I wasn't like a working cook.
Okay, so let's just put that aside for a minute. Your culinary experience has been with Mark.
Yes.
Amis, Mark's Restaurants in Philly.
Yep.
And then you go to where Mark worked.
Yep.
So you're seeing Bergamo, you're seeing where all the stuff from Mark came from. So at that particular moment, Bergamo and Mark are the only influence that you have.
That's my cooking
So when you started traveling through Italy, you went to Rome, you went to Torino, what impact did that have on you there's a broader scope? Yeah. Or you probably understood, I understand there's red sauce Italian, I understand the South, I understand the olive oils come from here, you understand regional, but what impact did that have on being there and seeing something different from the lenses that you've always been looking at it through?
I mean, I don't know if this happened then or I'm just saying this in retrospect, but it was really interesting being in Italy, and there's 2 different things going on there, because there's the old style classic food that when you read the cookbooks, this is the stuff that I gush over, all these weird old pies and tarts and very classic, a lot of really heavy things, these beautiful traditional dishes. And then you have a younger generation trying to do something completely different. Yeah. And that was what I was confused by.
Gold leaf risotto.
Literally, I was the restaurant I worked at, there was some Asian flavors going on sometimes, and a lot of different people were just experimenting, because I get it. You grow up eating Italian food, you cook Italian food, you want to know what else is out there, and you want to bring in these other influences. And that was something that I didn't like. I was I don't want to.
You're a purist.
I was this is so perfect. Eggplant parmesan is a perfect thing. Why are we putting this other thing in it? So that was a interesting moment for me, but it was also interesting to see that people in Italy who I am oh my God, they're surrounded by the best of the ingredients, the best recipes, the best tradition and culture. Even they want to experiment. Right. And that was an interesting
So it was okay. You said, it's okay to experiment.
Yeah, it was
get out of
it's
this
okay.
little kind of,
you don't have to be this way or the highway.
Yeah. I asked Mark this, I asked Jeff this also. At any moment were you you know what, I want to go kick around France for a little bit, or I want to fucking learn how to make paella, or I want to go see what they're doing in the south of Spain, or I'm going to go to Germany for a second and just kind of do a culinary adventure?
You know what, I had 4 years of my life where all I cared about was pasta, and it was so obsessed. I read, Mark had this book, I don't know if he knows that I still have it, it's the Encyclopedia of Pasta. I would read this thing cover to cover once a month, to make sure I knew every single name for a ravioli in every single different region.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, even when we worked together, like we would like look up pasta shapes and make them.
Yeah, totally. We were always
like,
researching.
It was like weird.
Right.
Get over it already.
Yeah, we were a good team. We'll get into that, but we were a good team for a while. Yeah.
I was so obsessed. And then when I came back to the States and I was like, okay, what's my next move? I was like, okay, I have to just leave this aside for a little bit because I'm going to burn out from this one type of cuisine. And I'm also like, what else is out there? Mm-hmm. So I made a promise to myself that the next job I took would be completely different than everything I did.
And that was?
Momofuku Ko.
Momofuku Ko.
Which is about as different as you can get in every
spectrum.
single... Completely.
Yeah. It's like going to cook on Mars.
Yeah, actually, it was.
So it was a different language.
It was a completely different language. Yeah. And, you know, I knew how to cook well in one language, and then you learn a different language, but it's also in a different environment. Mm-hmm. It was that 2-star Michelin vibe in New York City.
Crusher.
Yeah, and it was, I'm so glad I did it, and it was a really good experience, but also not my cuisine. I just didn't really feel a connection. Mm-hmm. And it just wasn't a great fit for me as a restaurant.
Right. Did you feel that experience, it wasn't a fit for you? That's okay. No problem. This is not for me. Do you feel like that solidified your passion and love for Italian cooking? Not really. No? I felt affirmed. I knew I loved Italian food and I knew it was like great. I always did wonder about French food, and you know, I did like a 3-week course in Le Cordon Bleu Paris when I was in college, so I like knew I loved French food, but I never really thought about, I did stage at Le Cuckoo, and I thought that was like the most amazing thing, but it still seemed overwhelming to me to like make that leap. Mm-hmm. But it definitely was like, okay, now I understand. I remember being in the fridge at Co and they're like, grab the dark soy and then the light mirror, and I'm like standing there reading these bottles at Japanese labels.
I'm like, how am I supposed to know? Like,
here we are,
like tasting.
Here we are in the cooler, Googling again.
I was like, I feel like I've seen this movie before. Yeah. It definitely, I don't know what it solidified. It solidified the type of environment I liked being in, and it solidified, I guess, a style of food that was less fancy that I liked cooking.
Did that, we're going to go off on a tangent. So you're cooking now. What type of influence did Momofuku Ko have on it now?
It definitely taught me to be cleaner. Mm-hmm. Like I think it gave me more habits as a cook than it did like actual influence my cooking.
Discipline of those Michelin-starred restaurants.
Yes, exactly. Sean Gray is a phenomenal cook, and like something that he did that I never saw before was he mounted a lot of sauces with raw shallots. So something like that, like we would finish the sauce for the duck pie with like raw shallot, and I was like, oh, this is adding a totally different dimension. And I mean, he's really good, and just like it was interesting to learn about food that way. That was so different from any perspective I'd ever worked with. But the kitchen definitely taught me better cooking habits organizationally that I did not have before at all.
And you're using those today?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Totally.
You're done at Momofuku.
Yes.
You come back to Philly.
I was at Roman's, that place, for a couple of months.
Yep.
And then when my last month in Italy, Mark came to eat dinner and he was like, so how do you feel about moving to Las Vegas, Chefy? And I was like,
never considered it till now.
Can't say I thought about it before. Why and what? And then he kind of mentioned that he was going to open in Vegas, and do I want the opportunity to go out there? Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, this sounds insane, and why not?
Yeah.
Let's go. I know how to cook this food like the back of my hand, and it'll be a cool opportunity from a management experience, and also like, when will I ever get an opportunity to open a restaurant of this caliber at the top of the Palms Hotel? Probably never. So let's go. So I knew I had a fixed amount of time in between Italy and Vegas. So that's what I thought it would be, a year in New York, and ended up being shorter because the opening actually happened on time.
Right. Well, that never happens.
Never happens.
Right, yeah.
So I was at Roman's for a couple of months in between, which I loved. And then I came back here for 2 weeks to like learn bread and then moved to Vegas.
Yeah.
Almost missed my flight. And I lived in the Hard Rock Hotel for a week while I looked for a place to live.
So weird, right?
That sounds like, it was so, I literally...
It looks better on paper.
I actually loved living there.
Yeah.
I think Vegas is so cool, and I was so healthy.
I mean, I could see myself living in Vegas.
And my fiance and I talked about it. Yeah. We're like, the weather's amazing. Rent was super affordable. The lifestyle, we went hiking all the time. Everyone's in hospitality and is so friendly.
Once you get off the strip, there's so many great ethnic restaurants.
Oh my God.
The guys are making hand-pulled noodles.
I dream about Chengdu taste.
Oh, so good.
I dream about the food.
Yeah, you sent me to so many good places, and I'd walk in there and be like, oh yeah, this is where I need to be.
Yeah.
This is it.
That was a good place.
Let's talk about the first week of the opening. First time you've ever opened a restaurant. Here you are, standing in the middle of the 20th floor, 25th floor, 100th floor of the Palms Hotel, overlooking the entire Las Vegas, and here you are, unpacking brand new
everything
saute pans.
Enough for 5 restaurants.
Yeah.
I was we were in totally over our heads, and it was like sink or swim, but we swam, and everyone rose to the occasion. But I mean, I look back and I kind of laugh, like, holy shit, I can't believe we pulled that off. But also, I mean, it was amazing. Talk about learning experience.
It was a great crew too.
It was a great crew.
Yeah.
Back to we ended up having a management change at the higher up level about 3 weeks after opening. So we all ended up moving up a role. But I like being in a position where I have a lot to chew on. So it was great and hard and a huge learning experience.
Yeah. That's when we met. No, we met before because we did the dinner at Vetri and we kind of knew each other.
Yeah. I still remember the smoked tofu puree you put with the mushrooms and the steak.
Yeah. And shiro dashi.
Yeah.
That's a.
I was like, what the fuck is dashi?
Yeah. Lena Hori and I created that. That was a tag team effort to get that. It was really good. Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah. We met in Vegas. We worked together in Vegas. That's when we became friends.
Was Brad there too when we were there?
Brad was there for a couple days, so he was passing off the torch. So Mark, when we were leaving Capper, Mark had called me. He's like, "What are you doing? I need some help." And I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "Brad Daniels is leaving. Can you come, and help these guys out?" I'm like, "Yeah, totally."
Guide us, please.
Yeah. That's when I first met you and realized your obsession with bread making.
Yeah.
So I would come in the afternoon. You had been there all morning, and you have all these loaves and rolls just sectioned out on sheet trays, and you're like, okay, we have to taste all these. What do you think? And I'm like, fuck it, they all taste the same. I didn't understand the level of what you're doing, but how does that, being a fanatic about doughs and bread, where did that not so much come from, but how are you always tweaking? When are you not tweaking something?
It's funny because at that moment in time, I had the time, which sounds hilarious. You open a restaurant, you have time. But once we got going, I had the time to do it. I had done some bread before I went out there, and Mark's like, I want you to head all of the bread when you go out there. And I was like, okay, great. I know how to make sourdough. How hard can it be? Completely a lie. So hard because you get out to Vegas and the hydration and the altitude, everything I thought I knew. It took me 2.5 months to make a loaf of bread that didn't look like a shoe. Right.
It's like you read recipes and you're like, unless you're in Colorado with the altitude, you're like, well, I'm never fucking baking. I don't give a shit about that, It was thank God I was out there a couple months before opening because it was really hard to figure out. And by having to break it down, and every single day I made probably 3 batches of bread, and I would change hydration up 2%. Wheat down 3%, starter up 4%, change the auto leaves from 2 hours to 3 hours. And I kept this crazy notebook. And I'm not a perfectionist in a lot of senses, but I just became so enraptured by this that it just took over. And I was really able to understand how to make bread after that 9-month experiment, because it was okay, we adjusted this and I would take notes and cut it and the crumb looks like this. And this whole thing is I'm saying this, I'm like, this is actually not my personality at all to be so mathematically calculated and perfectionist about bread, but I guess it just really hit out there. Yeah.
And it worked.
It totally worked.
Yeah, totally worked. And when do you know when to stop? You'll never know when to stop.
No,
when it tastes good and you're bored and you need to move on and tell yourself you need to move on.
Right.
Which is, then I went to French food.
So you were at Vetri, small restaurant. You were at Bergamot, tiny restaurant in Italy. You went to Momofuku Ko, another small restaurant, and now you're at a huge Vegas casino hotel. What kind of shock was that?
Oh my God, major shock.
Yeah.
In so many ways. First, it was a big change. I was in a management role. Most of the people I was overseeing were many years older than myself. I was the youngest person on the team, minus one pastry cook and one garde manger cook. So that was an interesting dynamic to tackle. We were doing, maybe 200 covers on our opening week. So to go from making 200 portions of pasta in a week to that many was a huge adjustment. And then it was the first restaurant I'd ever worked in where there were two teams. So the cooks who are making the pasta aren't the ones serving it.
Right.
And that was a huge shift because I didn't know restaurants worked like that until I got there.
The communication that has to happen between everybody.
Oh my God, the communication, the transition and realizing that it's another person's job. And that was something that was hard for me and is still hard for me because I don't like that, even though it makes sense.
Your first union hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, somebody spends hours making this pasta and a cook makes it and they overcook it and throw it away. And my heart would be like, you don't know, why are you doing that? You can't just throw that away. You have no idea what. And that was really hard for me. Yeah. That was hard for me. I was personally attached because I had been through the pain of making all of it. So that was an interesting battle.
How was honing your management skills at a young age in a union hotel in a large casino,
I definitely made mistakes.
Yeah.
But we all do and we learn, and I think I learned my management style, but I don't think I'm trying to think of what my style's different, and it's always it was just so drastically different than anything I had ever been in. I've never, let alone managed that. I've never worked in a place like that. So it was trying to figure out what people needed as I was in the situation. Yeah. You realize there's a lot of personal relationships of people that you have to mitigate. And I'm like, why am I handling people's personal lives, which I had never done before, while I'm telling them to season the Brussels sprouts. Now I'm talking about their entire personal life, but you learn, you learn a lot.
That's an extremely hard role that no
hard.
one ever really trains you for, and it's kind of not talked about, but having to deal with all the different personalities and trying to get everybody together for one common goal of serving the guests the best possible things we do. It was hard, and also being younger, and I am the last person. I hate being and as a female, even though I am, it's just we're all what we are. It was sometimes hard for people who were older than me that I was telling to cook a steak to a temp, and I'm saying, this is raw, cook it. And they're saying, no, it's not. I've been cooking steaks longer than you've been alive. You're
okay, great.
Say to that?
Don't
great.
care. Sure, you've been cooking for 27 years. This is still raw.
It's still raw.
I don't care that I'm not a man and I'm this young. It was a lot to navigate.
Right, it's another
and
layer.
I hate blaming or associating anything with that, but that's the reality.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah,
no, not many people want a little girl telling them what to do, and it's navigating that.
A 4-year-old union line cook.
Yes.
It doesn't really respond well to.
No.
Yeah.
And
it's tough.
You try and put yourself in everybody's shoes before you make any judgment call or tell anybody what to do, but at the end of the day, you want the best product.
So after Vegas,
when I was in Vegas, we did a dinner with the Joe Beef guys.
Yes, I was there for that.
Yeah, you were there.
Yeah.
And I mean, everyone I know who loves cooking loves Joe Beef, even if you've never been there. It's been the unicorn. Everyone hears about, dreams about, listens about. And my boyfriend, now my fiance at the time, he's from Montreal and he worked for Joe Beef. He opened Vin Papillon. We met at Co, and we were in long distance in Vegas. He was moving back to Canada.
Yeah.
And I really hit it off with them, and they're like, why don't you come hang out with us? And I was like, okay, great. So I secured a job at Joe Beef, and I moved to Montreal. And that was the most life-changing year with regards to the food I cook
How
now.
so?
I always explain this like this. I knew how to speak the language of cooking, so I wasn't so concerned about like how to cook a steak to temp, and I could focus on learning everything else. Mm-hmm. So you could explain a recipe to me by telling me how to make the sauce and reduce this and, caramelize this. And I'm not asking you, wait, what's a caramelize mean?
Right, yes.
So like I knew how to cook, and I was able to really dive into French cuisine because at the level I was already at, I could handle it and understand it way better, mm-hmm. which is why it was really awesome to like take a step down from management and go back to cooking and learn, which I know a lot of people are hesitant about sometimes.
Yeah, hesitant. I don't know why. You should just always be a student of.
You're good at that. You're the permanent student.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's like people are like, I get up here on this stool and now I don't want to get back down. I worked really hard to get here.
It's insecurity. It's ego. But it's a lot of things that you get in your own way about.
Yeah. If mm-hmm. I went to Joe Beef when I was younger, I would not have walked away with the same tools or understanding at all.
Yeah, great point.
Because I just didn't have the skills or capacity. I would have been too scared about learning how to set up a station that I wouldn't be able to like drink everything in like I felt like I did.
Now that's a French restaurant, but it's not really a French restaurant. It's kind of like...
Yeah, it's just the best. Yes and no. There is a lot of classic French there. And at the time I was there, it actually had an interesting shift because Marco Frappier, who was the chef there for 10 years.
Legend.
Yeah, he's amazing. Mm-hmm. Probably the best cook in the world. Just the most creative, thoughtful, and a beautiful person.
Super good dude.
I was with him for 6 months, and then he left to just do Mon Lapin full time. And Fred Morin, the OG chef, came back and took the helm, and I worked with him every day.
Now are they connected, those two restaurants, or?
Which, Mon Lapin? Not anymore.
Okay, right.
They were at one point, and now Mon Lapin is just Marco and his wife, Vanya. And then I got to spend a lot of time with Fred, who is very old school French.
Yes.
So I got kind of the best of both worlds, and oh my God, it was so magical. Yeah. I mean, we'd meet every day there at 7:00 in the morning and make these giant pâté pantins and all these jellied rabbit terrines and lièvre royale and all these old school things. And it was so awesome.
And you would say that was your first introduction to French cuisine? Sort of.
Yeah, I like new basics.
Yeah. Like professionally cooking.
Yes, 100%. Okay, my first,
What things from Italy that you learned translated over to that restaurant?
A love of ingredients, and respect, I guess. Yeah. But the food could not have been more different.
The cooking techniques.
The actual cooking techniques. Yeah. I learned everything. How to make a sauce. And my biggest takeaway was sauce work, which I'm now a fanatic about. Yes. I love sauce. And it was just so cool. I have I'm a romantic. Yes. So even though my days there were like sometimes 16 hours long and tiring and exhausting, I look back, I'm like, like rainbows and butterflies and cookies all the time.
It's amazing that the human brain, you can look back at your life and you sort of remember the fun things,
Yeah.
Even
really
like restaurants that I had a really hard time at, I still remember like the guys I worked with, and you don't really remember that particular moment that the chef pushed you against the wall and told you he's going to punch you in the face.
Yeah.
Or even like old relationships that ended badly. You go back and you look at like, we went to this place and we had a great experience here.
We're naturally optimistic as humans.
I think so, right?
And somebody once told me we have this perpetual optimism and we're like, it'll work out. And you just keep saying that until there's a positive resolution because we always want there to be a good outcome.
I heard a saying that it was people are good. And when it really comes down to it, people are good people, and they're going to eventually do the right thing and make the right choices.
I hope so.
I mean, I was like, I don't know what world are you living in? But if you really think about it, like, if you ask for a stranger for help, like 9 out of 10 times they're going to help you.
Yeah.
You know? And that's, I guess, coinciding with what you said. We're all optimists.
Rose-colored glasses sometimes. Yeah.
So you're making huge terrines, sauce work, absorbing it all.
Cooked more meat than I've had in my entire life.
What are some of your favorite dishes that you learned there?
My favorite dishes. Just the terrines and pâté en croûtes in general,
Yeah.
but also like vermouth sauce and like guinea hen with Riesling and mushrooms.
So
and
so classic.
It's so classic.
It's so
and
great.
it completely changed my perspective on creativity and not needing to be creative.
You think it? Yeah. Okay. So you think it opened up another door of creativity?
100%. It opened up the door of look through the cookbooks, read these classics, people have done them, and you can be creative by doing those with what's around you.
What type of restraint do you think that taught you?
A lot.
Yeah.
I did not need to be. I remember being a younger cook, and it was like, I need to think of the thing that no one's ever had before, and like, let me put reindeer vinegar on a gooseberry and stuff it inside Parmesan and serve it in cacio e pepe. I don't even know what that means. But
Sounds delicious.
you're so obsessed with creating and making, and then I was like, fuck that.
Yeah.
Let me turn the complete opposite page. Hey, you know what's really good? Peas and bacon.
Right.
That's it. Like, pick classic combinations: chicken and mushrooms, peas and bacon, honey nut squash and brown butter. And like, I don't need to reinvent the wheel. I just want to make something really delicious, because it almost seems like less people are doing that. And it's harder to do what's been done and be okay with saying it's been done.
Right. It's so funny that you mentioned it. I looked at Preston and smiled, because we had a conversation with Mark, and he said the same thing. Young cooks, whenever you want to,
I mean, how many times do you think
everything,
Mark told me when I was making him dishes when I was 21, being like, Chefy, do less here.
do less? Yeah.
Go look through the cookbook. You know what's really good? Duck and pappardelle.
I feel like it's a rite of passage or
100%.
obstacle that every chef cook needs to overcome their own ego of trying to conquer the world. I went through the same thing. I struggled with it for a really long time, and it wasn't until the pandemic that I turned my house into a private dinner party, and it was just me.
Yeah.
And I do dinners for 6 to 10 people Thursday, Friday, and it was just me. And I would come downstairs and I would have a coffee and I'd open up the fridge and I'd pull everything out and I'd be like, what are we making today? And it wasn't, I gotta fucking blow people's minds.
No.
I need to make koji. We need to like figure out this. We need to reinvent the wheel. And it was just like, I'm gonna make fucking delicious food.
And that's what blows people's minds.
And it was a combination of me just cooking from my heart and cooking what I thought was good and inviting people into my home that can't go out. And everybody was so gracious and just so happy they were out. And I could serve them anything, and they were like, "This is the fucking best experience we've ever had."
That's the complete mentality with which I run my restaurant today with, and it's been a big game changer. And you're right, everybody goes through that, and it's like accepting it and recognizing it, and damn, is it such a relief, and our things taste so much better.
It's a hard mountain to climb, though. It really
and
is.
I actually feel like I got there relatively early, and I'm lucky about that. And I think it's, people like Mark who cook really classic food, and people like Fred, and just like being like, what do I want to actually eat?
Right. What's your impression?
What's my impression?
In your impression on cooking, like what's your, like...
I want to eat like simple food, and even if it's not simple, I want it to come across as simple. And I don't need you to know everything that's in it, and I don't need you to know how long it took me and how long this process and arduous it was and how many days I went. Like, I don't care. Like, I don't need... I guess my biggest takeaway is when people eat the food I cook, I don't need them to try and figure out if it's delicious.
Correct.
Like, stop trying. Like, you're like, I'm eating this and I'm chewing. I'm like, does this taste good? Like, no. Uninhibited, pure, delicious, and simple. There's nothing that you need to try and figure out as you eat it, except like, oh, how'd they do this? Not like, do I like this? And what is this? And that's been kind of how I try and...
It's a hard thing for us to turn our brain off at dinner. We're constantly working.
Yes. You're constantly working.
Yeah.
You're constantly working. And the more you take on your plate, the more you're working, because the more influences you don't even realize you're absorbing.
Right.
Like, you think I ever cared about what napkin was on my lap when I went out to eat?
Right.
Like, now I do.
It's always, wow, this dish looks beautiful and it's Instagrammable, but the minute you take a bite, if it's not delicious, nobody gives a fuck about the presentation.
Yeah. I would rather be served a heaping plate of brown ragu and with a spoon and good bread, and it looks ugly, but...
Also, if you let Mother Nature guide you through the season, there's all your creativity right
Yeah,
there.
totally.
There's a reason peas go with fava beans and mushrooms and asparagus.
100%.
And an egg. So, you finished there. So they had a huge impact. You're cooking French cuisine. You're loving it. What was living in Montreal like?
Amazing.
Yeah.
It was.
What a food capital.
It was like a storybook.
Yeah.
Every day, my friend Benji, who is the CDC at Joe Beef, we'd like, it sounds like a made up land. We'd like go to the market and like go to the butcher shop and like pick up our order and buy some blueberries while we're there and make like a tart.
They're like,
they're marché. Like it's a real market and everything.
There's not people selling bananas and limes.
No, it was so, exactly. It was so inspiring all the time. And on the weekends, you're going and getting a slice of terrine and just the food. It was a cultural experience in the best way. Magical place.
Mm-hmm. So you had to leave or you left?
Both.
Yes.
The pandemic hit. My visa was
you were
expired.
still there for the pandemic. I thought you left before that. Okay.
I was still there when the pandemic hit. I left Joe Beef on a Friday afternoon. My shoes and everything were still there, and it was like that was my last day, and I had no idea. I stayed in Montreal for a month, and
there were lockdown happened there?
Yeah,
or? Okay.
really intense lockdown.
Wow. Canada. Yeah, they were tough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then they announced the border was going to close, and my visa was expiring, and I was like, okay, I have to go now.
Yes.
Bye, boyfriend.
Oh man.
It was like a bad Lifetime movie for my personal life, but we're getting married, so we figured it out. I left. I taught cooking classes.
You left in March 2020?
April. I left in the end of April.
Okay.
I came back the first week of May, I believe.
Where did you move back to Philly?
No, I actually went to my parents' house.
In Connecticut?
In Connecticut. With my siblings and everybody's significant others and the babies and my grandma. There were 10 people living there.
And you left your boyfriend in Montreal. And we're all living here. Everybody's here. How's it going?
Sorry. It was really bad. I feel bad. Sorry, Alex, when you listen to this. It was really nice to be with my family. I hadn't had time like that in a really, really long time. Right. I was just cooking meals.
Oh, I'm sure. You just took control of the kitchen.
I took control of the kitchen, which was fun. But when you wake up and the only thing everyone has to look forward to is what's for dinner tonight, you kind of want to punch yourself in the face after week 3.
You're ordering pizza.
I started a catering business out of this little commissary I was doing. I taught cooking classes virtually 5 nights a week. And I was like, okay, I know this pandemic's happening, but I have to move on with my life, and I think I'm ready to open something. Mm-hmm. So I started looking in New York during the pandemic. Everyone's like, COVID deal, but not really COVID deal.
Totally.
There
were no deals.
There were no deals. I wanted to be in the West Village, and I started looking at rents, and it was $30,000. And I was like, oh my God. A month. Yes. I was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. Like, that's not fun. Like $30,000 before I turn the lights on or cook anything. Like, nope. So then I thought about Philadelphia. I was like, okay, my food community is really there anyways. Everyone I grew up with as a line cook is now exec chef or opening their own place or a sous chef. And
close enough to Connecticut.
Connecticut, and good food scene and much more affordable. So I moved back to Philly. Mm-hmm. I started looking.
And this was during the pandemic still?
During the pandemic, in the September.
Yes.
I started looking for restaurants. I was still doing the whole cook from home thing. I did a little bit of private chefing, and I had like 5 deals fall through of restaurants that thought they were closing, didn't close, wanted less rent, wanted more rent. And I was really frustrated, obviously. Mm-hmm. And then I was shown this really ugly pizza shop, but it had a hood. And I somehow wrote this business, literally, I wrote this business plan, and I was like, hey, I'll rent this space from you for 3 months. Let's see what happens. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the hood didn't work.
Yeah.
After I signed, obviously, the hood didn't work. Somehow, I opened this place in 3 weeks. Painting it, turning it around, getting equipment, buying plates from every thrift store. And I had no idea what it was going to be. I wrote a plan for it to be picnic baskets.
Did you even have a menu?
No, it was going to be prepared. It was going to be chicken salad and loaves of bread for people to take outside because no one was allowed to eat inside. Mm-hmm. And then the week before I opened, they lifted restrictions. And they're like, you can be inside. And I was like, okay, well.
As you're looking at all the picnic baskets, you just.
Great. Like all those picnic baskets I just purchased. Beautiful.
I just made 100 pounds of chicken salad.
What do I do with this? A staff meal for just myself.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'll just cook dinner and invite my friends here and see what happens.
Yeah.
And that was it. Mm-hmm. I wrote a menu. by hand. My best friend from high school moved here to work here for 2 months, and whatever this ended up being. My friend Steven was on board. I found a dishwasher on Craigslist, and I had people in. There were no substitutions. It was like at the dinner parties I used to throw when I had my supper club business in New York,
Right.
and there was just really organic, and that was it.
And what's it evolved into now?
Oh my God. Now I was calling us a not restaurant for like a really long time, but now we're definitely a restaurant. We got a liquor license.
Well, Her Place, great name.
Her Place.
Preston asked me, where we going? Where we going? We're going to Amanda's place. It's her place. And he goes, yeah, what's the name? No, it's called Her Place. Who's on first?
It's a good name. I like the name.
It's fun, yeah.
It's a lot of the ethos is there from the beginning. At the end of the day, I was like, I just want this a place for people to go have a dinner. I've been, in the back for so long. I want to tell people what they're eating. I want to tell them where it comes from. I want them to feel like they're in my house. And I'm going to change the menu every 2 weeks, which is psychotic.
Yes.
And we still do it. But it's great, and it's really...
Well, every 2 weeks is, every day is psychotic. Every 2 weeks is, questionable.
Every day is definitely psychotic.
Yeah.
And I tried that. We did that. I worked at a restaurant that we did that. I was like, oh my God, my brain is spinning.
Right.
It's special. It's like a dinner party. It really is. There's no substitutions. We're not open on the weekends. We have an 108 bottle wine list. We have cocktails.
Because why not?
Well, because why not? And honestly, the whole thing, I was like, nothing about this place makes sense. We might as well continue the not making sense with a really elaborate wine list. But it's a special place. It's still a not restaurant in my head. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, but why? Because you're having
there's
so
no
much
rules.
fun doing it. There's no rules.
It's so much fun, and there's no rules. And can we have substitutions? Can we have a reservation on Saturday? Can we swap this for this? We don't eat this. And you know what? The answer is no.
This is what we made.
This is what we made.
This is it.
It's literally,
how many seats is it?
And people, it's 24 seats.
24 seats.
People are, can we have this? And I'm literally like, this is how I describe it. You're going to your mom's friend's house for dinner. This is what she made. You're not going to ask her for chicken if she made salmon. And if you don't like salmon, then just eat more broccoli and you're fine.
Right.
Like, that's what it is. Like, that's what this dinner is. And there's so many restaurants, and there is a formula that everybody else has adopted that's been accepted, and that's great. This is not that, and that's fine.
Do you think, at least I'd like to believe that the post-pandemic world we're seeing, at least I'm seeing, I've been saying this for a while, the trend is going to be smaller restaurants, smaller crew, less rent, less hours of operation, harder to get a reservation, you really have to plan, and a pushback against, I don't eat all this stuff.
Yeah, 100%.
This is our menu. Like, there's a restaurant in Nashville, Locust, which is, it's it's very similar to you. It's just like a hodgepodge of what Trevor loves to cook.
Yeah.
And you go in there, it's like, this is our fucking menu. This is what we got. Like, we're a 24-seat restaurant.
Yeah.
That's it,
Things feel a lot less apologetic now,
Yeah.
and you need a lot less reasoning and a lot less explanation, and it's a lot less the customer is always right, and it's more like, this is what we're doing, take it or leave it.
Right. Well, I always say, I wouldn't walk into a vegan restaurant and be like, where's the steak? Can I get a burger? But for some reason, I'm not shitting on vegans at all, but for some reason, a restaurant feels they need to accommodate to everybody.
Yeah.
And you're going to have that one vegan dish on the menu for that one vegan person that might come, they might not. And then all of a sudden there's this weird dish that's on the menu that people are going to order, and they're going to be like, this isn't that great. Well, it's not that great because there's none of the things that we love to cook that are in there.
100%.
So it's like, where does that, I don't want to say entitlement because I'm not shitting on vegans, but it's kind of like,
But
I wouldn't
that's
walk
been
into
the
a
model
vegan,
for so long.
It's been accepted.
The whole idea of restaurants is let us serve you, and that's not it anymore.
Right. It's
I don't
definitely
think
not
that's
it.
not it anymore.
No,
I don't think of my restaurant. If my servers, if Juliana and Nicole said to somebody when they sat down, how can I help you this evening? I would throw up. Yeah. That is not the place we are.
Right.
You're in our house. So excited to have you in. What are we drinking tonight? That is a completely different mindset than how can I serve you this evening?
Right.
Like,
if you don't see anything on the menu, just let me know. Make it whatever you want.
it is like, it's so different.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that. And it's almost like we are making an anti-restaurant rejection of the norms.
Right.
But it's also like, in order to survive, that's kind of what we need to do.
Correct.
Like, you go to a tasting menu and this is what we have, and we're putting every ounce of everything we've got, love, passion, work, everything in these 8 dishes. So they're gonna be really the best of what we're making that day. Like, I'm not gonna scramble in 3 minutes and make you a substitute that's gonna be not what we planned. Like, that's not.
Well, I'm not going to stop everybody else's dinner also to kind of like accommodate
100%.
this one person that probably is never going to come back.
And even if they do come, I mean, do you know how many times we get people that are like, I know you said no restrictions,
But
and I emailed you and you said you're not going to accommodate, but I'm a vegetarian. What can you do for me?
Yeah.
And we have to look them in the eye and say, I'm sorry, nothing. You're going to sit through this entire meal and you're going to have the meat on the table because the person you came with wants to eat it, but I'm not making you a thing. And it's so uncomfortable. It's so, I feel horrible. I'm like, oh my God, I do have pasta in the back, but don't tell anybody. Or we have an extra thing from staff meal and I have to sit on my hands and say no, because that's not what we do.
Right.
And it sucks, but you're a vegetarian. You want to come? Great. I love vegetables. There's a lot of them. Eat those. Don't eat
You
them.
wouldn't walk into the Nike store and look for a pair of jeans.
No.
You know?
Exactly.
And there's so many. It's the restaurant industry that's the only industry that does this.
That's
you know?
why it's weird.
Yeah.
It's also like we're the only industry that gets like critiqued by anybody with access to a keyboard.
Right.
Like,
It's kind of a bullshit industry.
well, I'm trying to change it a little bit.
I just hope that the pendulum is swinging back in the favor of restaurateurs, back in the favor of letting them do what they do. The specialized restaurants, like, hey, this is what we do. I'm sorry, but this is what we do. But I just hope it doesn't swing too far where we're losing hospitality. Where we're actually
100%.
walking away, fuck you, we're not doing this. You
No.
know, we have to be hospital. It's the hospitality
Yes,
industry.
and I love hospitality,
Yes.
and there is something so beautiful about really old school hospitality. Will Guidara's book just came out.
Who?
And Will
Yes,
Guidara,
I
and you
mean,
listen to
legend.
his
Yeah, legend.
notes on hospitality of them going to fill people's meters and like overhearing that somebody wanted to try a hot dog and then bringing them a hot dog at 11 Madison Park. Like, that is exciting to me.
Right.
But like, you're doing that for the people who believe in what you're already doing.
But don't you think that's too much?
I mean,
And
obviously,
it works in
there's
their
a line.
aesthetic. It works
There's a
in
line.
their aesthetic, and you're sitting in their world, and you're a guest at their house, and we're gonna do whatever the fuck we can to blow your mind.
And in their house, that's what they want to do, and I think that's great.
Right.
In my house, I'm gonna blow you away with what we're already doing, and if there's something I can go above and beyond, like you saying you really wish you got to try the dessert from last week. That's the ice cream cake, and I have it. Like, I'm gonna give you a piece of ice cream cake
right.
when I can do it. I would like. There's nothing. I love that mentality. Like, I want to make it special. I want to personalize this for you. But it's also like there's 23 other people in the room.
Correct. I hope that we can start categorizing that as restaurants, just like a one size fits all. And now it's like, well,
There
you
is
have
no
this
one.
restaurant
Yeah.
like this. Now it's a little bit more nuanced than just saying, what are you going to do for me?
Yeah, I do think restaurants are, even from my own perspective, like they are changing a lot, and what you think you need to do a restaurant is changing a lot. And I'll say this, I opened this restaurant and it was ugly. Nothing matched. The floors looked like a bad all-inclusive resort. Like, it was really ugly, and it couldn't have been more bare bones. And the only person that really cared that it was so ugly was
you.
me.
Yeah.
And people are like, it's so charming. And I'm like, oh my God, I look at these floors and I want to throw up.
Yeah.
And then we could afford a renovation and we did it. And now it finally looks the way when you envision having a restaurant your whole life, you want it to look a certain way. Am I the only one who cared? Probably.
Yeah.
As I progress in my career, can I afford to open a restaurant that looks like shit again? I don't know.
Right.
Do I need all of the bells and whistles I thought I did? No.
Correct.
Do I need to open a $1 million build-out restaurant with velvet couches? And no, I don't need that. But like, do I need to go a little more from the bare bones I started with? Yes.
Yeah.
But to all the people out there, if anyone, whoever's listening out there who wants to open a restaurant.
Nobody's listening to this.
Well, we're not doing a very good job. Hopefully I'm not the selling point.
Yeah,
But, you don't need all of that to get started.
Right.
Just make good food that you like
I'm
and be nice.
I'm in the midst of it now, and I'm saying I don't give a fuck what the bathrooms look like as long as the toilet and sink works and we can clean it.
Yeah.
Like, why am I spending? Why are we designing a bathroom? Well, and then people care. I'm like, no one's coming here because this designer, this famous designer designed the bathroom. That's not a selling point, and it's constantly.
But do you feel like because you're, I'm going to be the interviewer now. Do you feel like because you're Ryan Pulley and you've worked at these places and you've been the chef of Catbird and like you have a level that you have worked at, do you feel like you need to have a place look a certain way when people walk in, expectation wise?
No, I don't care. And I'm fighting with myself and I'm fighting with the designers and the contractors of like, here they presented a beautiful restaurant. Like, fuck, this is great. And it's so out of the budget that it's like, well, I don't need any of this.
Yeah.
When it comes down to it, like, we need to get the place open.
Yeah.
People are not coming because we have cool tiles,
Yeah.
And then as we go, we could add more money and start putting money into it and this and that. But it's like, where's the line of, I need to get this place open as fast as possible.
That's kind of any project I do from here on out will be like, make it nice enough, get it open, and reinvest as you have income to keep everything going.
Yeah. But I'm at the point where it's like, when we first started, I didn't know I wanted this stuff, and now we presented it. I'm like, oh, well, we have to have this pasta room. We have to have this, and now it's like, well, I didn't need that before. Why do I need it now?
Because when you're in it and you see it, you realize you wanted it the whole time, and it's so cool.
And that's what they're good at.
And you've also worked at really beautiful places.
Yeah.
And it's hard to like imagine your own thing not being what you've always pictured it as.
I just want comfortable chairs, tables big enough that we can do 3-4 pastas on the table at once, and the rest will fall into place.
It will fall into place.
Yeah.
And you can get more stuff as you need it. I'm going to show you a before and after picture when you come to eat tonight. It's a little astounding.
So, what is the restaurant? I mean, we went through, that's kind of what I want to do, but really, what's your elevator pitch? I'm in an elevator with Smet, I own a restaurant. Oh, what kind of restaurant?
It's a dinner party restaurant. Okay. There's 2 seatings, 6:00 and 8:30.
All at once?
All at once. It's French, Italian, a little bit Jewish. We cook what the people who give us the food tell us to cook. And we cook for ourselves, and we cook for what we think people want to eat.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of classic dishes. We do a lot of salade lyonnaise and a lot of cassoulet and a lot of meat and sauce and fish and sauce. And I'm allergic to like a composed dish with a starch, a sauce, and a protein and a vegetable garnish. And it's just, the food's fun and tasty and salty and acidic and bright. And it's a party.
Yeah.
It's a party. It's a good time. And there's an open kitchen. I talk you through every dish. Me, my sous chef, my cook. And it feels very convivial and communal. Yeah. Tables are talking to each other. And it's a night out. It's an experience. It's more than dinner.
Okay, so 3-part question. What aspects of Vetri can you see at the restaurant? And not so much the cooking in the restaurant. What aspects of Momofuku Ko? What aspects of Mr. Beef?
This is hard.
That's not going to be easy. Tough. We do tough questions on this podcast.
I have to think about this. Okay. Not related to the food.
But not related to the food.
Oh, man.
Maybe the style of the restaurant, the feeling, the organization. It could be food if you want to.
Okay, I'm going to just start going.
I mean, obviously you say cassoulet. We know where that came from.
Yeah, the food is mostly Joe beef related, I would say. It's more French than it is Italian, except when I do pastas that kind of have some crossover sometimes. When you eat at Vetri, you feel like you're in someone's house. And that's a big thing I took away. Like, yeah, it's fancy because the food's fancy. And the food is on fancy plates, not because it's fancy, unidentifiable dishes. And I love that. Like, I want our food to be fancy because it's like a fancy puntarelle. Not because there's like 1,000 different gadgets involved. So kind of Vetri's sense of like hospitality and home that kind of pervades. Joe beef, the ode to the classics, the style of cooking I do is a lot to them, a lot of my presentation and tableside pouring and like appreciation for just like old world and recognizing that people already did it and just try and do what they did because they're going to do it way better than I ever could. That comes from there. Momofuku, my organization, and like how I should talk to people and how you should not talk to people. I learned a lot about that from there. And this environment of a restaurant that I'm trying to create is like, I want people to want to work there for a really long time. And I don't want this to be a one-stop shop for some people. And I'm hiring people with intention who are looking for a lifestyle job and not coming to do a year and bounce. Like, I'm collecting amazing individuals who I'm so grateful. I work with the best people. Everyone from my best friend and GM, Juliana, like everyone has a piece of this place. It's not her place. It's our place. Like, it's everybody who touches this place has an impact. And because it's so small, you see everybody's impact. But I'm really trying to make it more than just dinner service and trying to provide healthcare and a Monday through Friday schedule and paid vacations every quarter. And this isn't answering the question at all. And this is, I guess,
go ahead, keep
this
going.
is what I didn't get from any of those places that I'm trying to make my mark on. I want people to want to work there, and I want it to be a hard job to get because they want to be part of something different.
You think having a 24-seat restaurant offering health insurance is feasible?
We pay 50% of people's health insurance. Is it feasible? I'll let you know. This is our second month.
Yeah.
But
when the restaurant closes, like, we shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. I don't.
We have to start somewhere, right?
I have to start somewhere. And if
right?
if I can't do it, then we'll increase prices until we can.
Yeah, right.
It's gonna.
If you can't be a steward of change, then what the fuck are you doing?
We have to work backwards and figure out what works and what doesn't. If I could survive with 6 staff members as a BYO and still make enough money to keep the lights on and pay my own rent a little bit, like, just keep pushing it. Yeah. This is not the profit center. This is not my debut. This is not my make it rich thing at all. Yeah, right. But it's like, it's building something that can support everything else that we make as the road goes on. And trying to work backwards sometimes and figure out how you get there. I mean, we're paying $75 for the menu. Yeah, that's
up your prices.
Not a lot. I know.
Up your prices.
We will, and we need to, but I want it to be accessible. But what's accessible today, anyways?
What's accessible? Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
Every time I go into Whole Foods, it's becoming Target. It's about $150.
How much do you think the case of cauliflower I bought yesterday was?
$85.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the same amount as 50 pounds of potatoes. Right.
It's where is price gouging, and where is the inflation, and where is people just taking advantage of a situation, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, how do we raise the prices in order to make
food's
a profit?
expensive.
And have the guests understand that eventually a chicken entree at your local bistro is going to be $65.
I think part of something that's interesting and I'm trying to do, if you're listening to this and you've seen me on social media, I'm on it a lot, but I don't like it. You kind of have to be, and it's my direct window to talk to the people who are coming, right? So I have found that like being honest and telling people why something's happening has been my kind of route. And I was talking with Mark about this the other day. Like when I first opened, I was just cooking for the first 5 months. And I was like, I'm too tired. I'm not opening tomorrow. Sorry, we're closed. And people were like, woohoo, like good for you, girl. Like get it. I'm like, this is so weird. Like, but if you explain why, and like a lot of restaurateurs are posting these charts of frying oil and this costs this. I'm like, that's important. Like people need to know. So if I need to explain in 6 months that we're going from $75 to $90 so everyone can have paid vacation and continue to have health insurance, like, then I'll do it.
Do you think you need to explain it?
You know what? Everybody else says no. I feel like I do, but maybe I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know. No one else. Like, I mean, in what other place do they explain
zero
price of Botox is going up? It's because
there's no car dealership explaining,
No, you're right. Maybe I don't. But I don't know. I just I don't want people to feel like I'm trying to make food like out of reach or thinking my stuff is more valuable than it is. It's just...
I think you're in your own head.
I know, I'm in my own head.
I think people are going to latch on to you because of your cooking style, your personality, and the special thing that you're doing. And I think people are going to come and pay whatever because they want to be a part and they want to be around you.
I hope so. It's just, it's hard with such a small business and now all these people counting on me.
Counts, yeah.
It's everything counts, and every decision affects so many more people than myself now.
I agree. So you've been at it for, it's been 2 years now?
It's a year and almost 6 months.
Wow.
It'll be 2 years in June.
Are you even thinking about what's next?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah. What's that process? You don't have to tell us what's going on.
When's this airing?
Yeah. A couple weeks to December.
Hopefully I'll have something in the works that I can talk about soon.
But what does that look like? What is expansion from a 24-seat restaurant?
What is expansion? I will never again build a concept around myself. And that's something that you, more than anybody...
Right. Because if you're not there, what's the concept?
Well, now what I am trying to explain to everybody is like, I'm not the concept. The concept is the concept. The concept.
Concept.
The concept. The idea that I'm trying to... That her place is that someone is cooking food and they really care about it and they're just telling you what it is. And then they're the ones putting it on the table.
Yes.
That's the concept. It's not me. I'm just attached to it currently.
Right.
But like, you'll come to dinner tonight, my sous chef will tell you things, my other line cook will tell you things, Juliana will tell you things. It is such a group effort. And is it really hard to peel myself away from it when people associate me with it and expect me to be there every day? Yes. And that's really scary and something I'm currently trying to work through because it's, you kind of feel trapped a little bit. Yeah. You don't want to disappoint anybody. You don't want people to come in expecting you when you not be there, when you've been there. I mean, I have never missed, there's no service that I'm not there.
Correct.
We've done a wine and cheese, a wine class, and that's a little terrifying. Can they do a service without me? 100%. Can somebody else tell you what your main course is and explain how they cook the chicken and brine it and then cook it for you? 1,000%. And that day will come. And we're working there. But it's definitely a hard thing to kind of back yourself out of. But thankfully, I've got the sickest team ever, and they're amazing.
I can't wait to meet them.
Yeah.
But why does a restaurant need a concept?
You know what? My fiance and I
literally... What the fuck? Where we serve food?
Marco Frappier said to Alex, my fiance, was like, Americans, like, concept.
Yeah.
Like, you're right. It's a restaurant. We're serving food. That's the concept.
Yeah. The concept is
it.
You make a reservation, you come in, you eat, you pay, you leave.
Yeah, I guess that's the concept.
Yeah.
The next thing I do, I guess I can give like a little, it's something Alex and I are working on together. He's the best chef I know.
Is he still in Montreal? Just
waiting.
I'm kidding. He's still there, man.
Oh God, too soon. Too soon. He lives in Philly. He lives in Philly, and we work together. He was working at her place with me for a bit. He's doing some consulting now.
Great.
And the next thing we do, like, we'll do together.
Sure.
And he'll run the day-to-day kitchen, and I'll do the pastry, and we'll come up with everything together, and I'll run like the back end, but he'll be the day-to-day chef.
Yeah. And that's what's next for you.
Oops. I hope I didn't break this.
I hope I don't fall.
Oh, no. Yeah, that's what's next for me. And I'm excited. But it's going to be cool, and the vibe will be there.
Yeah.
But it's definitely going to be different.
Well, I'm so excited for dinner tonight. I can't wait to come in.
Oh, I can't wait to have you.
Tell you I'm a vegetarian and I can't eat gluten.
If you show up full, you're in trouble.
No, we're definitely not showing up full. So it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you over these years. I am enamored by the way your career has been going. I always knew you were a talent, and it's so great to sit down with you and actually hear
Thank you.
Your story about your place.
This has been really fun.
Yeah.
It's been a good time.
Good time. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Of course, anytime, and good luck with your restaurant.
Thank you.
So excited to feed you tonight.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Bye.